Hello and welcome, everyone. Such a pleasure to have you join us for our first quarterly network call for the United in Sustainability Movement in 2024. We have a pretty detailed program today, so we'll be moving things along through updates, through special guests, and then looking ahead. So with that said, we invite you to be conversant in the chat. If you have some questions, feel free to post those. And I will turn this segment over to Ema Gordon, who's the first vice president at UNFCU for corporate social responsibility and impact. Over to you, Ema.
Thank you so much, Liz. I have such a simple task today, which is really just to welcome all of our colleagues and friends. Thank you so much for joining us. While I have the floor, I'll say thank you so much for those of you that were able to join us in person and virtually when we were all together learning so much and talking so much and sharing so much last November in DC. We had an amazing time with our wonderful co-hosts at the UIS FCU. So it's wonderful to see your smiling faces again. And there's a lot that we will discuss today. So just wanted to say thank you on behalf of UNFCU. And thank you for all of you for taking the time to join us to learn and also to share the lessons that you want to share with the rest of us. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague as well, Tom Korean. So Tom Korean has the absolute opportunity, who is the first vice president of Enterprise Information Security, but we also keep him equally busy as the program manager for the industry team here at UIS. So thanks, Tom. I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Ema. Hopefully my internet is working all right today. It's, of course, a big day of internet outages across the US, so we'll see how we do. All right. Well, again, thank you, Ema. And again, it's always a pleasure. And again, this is one of my favorite things to talk about besides information security is all the work we do at UIS. And I'll just briefly remind everyone, UIS is a collaborative network of credit unions and cooperatives, now global, that really believe that values are the real differentiator and the real difference that our organizations bring to our members and our customers is that we focus on our community. It's our competitive differentiator. With that, I will just do a few little updates on what UIS has been doing. Hopefully, as you can see the screen, right? So I put into the chat already a couple of links that hopefully afterwards you guys can take a look at. Of course, the most important is just a little recap. As we mentioned in November, we did have our United in Sustainability Summit, and that was a really wonderful event. If you did miss it or just want to relive it, we do have links on the UIS website for the event itself with photos. And also, if you were interested in any of the presentations, you can download the presentations from the UIS website, and you can watch the entire playlist of all the presentations on YouTube as well. So that's there. Really happy to have all that and have all the great participation internationally and from the people who were lucky enough to be in that beautiful facility at OAS in person. Another important thing that happened at that event was the kickoff of our advisory council. We're very excited to kind of open up and get feedback from lots of industry experts, many of who I think are on this call right here. And we'll be doing, taking their feedback as well as the feedback of all of our participants. And we've got plenty. So we're really excited to have done all that and to see what UIS has done. And we've definitely heard some of the feedback. I think we'll talk about some of that in the look forward section. But Liz, I think those are the kind of important updates that UIS has had since last time we all spoke.
Terrific. Thanks, Tom. Very exciting all around. Thank you again. So during our UIS network calls, as many of you know, we focus on key issues and themes that are really shaping credit unions' sustainability journeys. And many of these ideas are drawn from conversations we've had with you at our UIS summits and from our surveys. And to this end, today's segment delves into the intersection of climate and social justice. And we're so very fortunate to have guest speakers whose work not only leans into this topic, their efforts are creating opportunities and solutions. Joining us first is Hannah Kramer, and she's the director at Inclusiv Center for Resiliency and Clean Energy. Inclusiv, as many of you know, is a certified community development financial institution, CDFI, an intermediary. And for the last 50 years, Inclusiv has been dedicated to transforming local progress and lasting national change. Inclusiv specifically provides capital, makes connections, builds capacity, develops innovative products and services, and advocates for its member community development credit unions. So on and on. In her role, Hannah serves as a strategic advisor to the center's rapidly growing network of community financial institutions, helping them to build accessible and affordable clean energy financing solutions in underserved communities. Hannah holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science from Kenyon College. Any Ohio credit unions out there? And she also holds a Master's of Public Administration from the London School of Economics. So Hannah, thank you so very much for joining us today. It's always terrific hearing from Inclusiv and getting your insights. And congrats on your organization's golden anniversary and the conference that's coming up this spring right here in New York. I'm sure it'll be exceptional. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Liz. I really appreciate that introduction and a huge fan of Ohio. So if there are Ohio credit unions out there, love to talk clean energy. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you all see it. It's coming up. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so today I'm gonna share a few slides, but I hope it's a discussion. So if you have questions or thoughts, please chime in via the chat or unmute if you're feeling bold. But I'll happily also connect with you anytime. I can share my contact information at the end, but we're here, an Inclusiv Center for Resiliency and Clean Energy really exists to support our credit unions and the credit union ecosystem in building and deploying green loans. So I won't spend too much time on Inclusiv because Liz did a fantastic job explaining who we are, but we are a national nonprofit and a certified CDFI intermediary. We are 50 years old and we work with over 500 credit unions across the country, including many cooperativas in Puerto Rico. And we launched our Center of Resiliency and Clean Energy in 2019, really because of what we were hearing from our network of credit unions about the need to provide these types of green lending and resiliency projects and loan products to the communities that they serve. The first thing I want to talk about is really what green lending is and what credit union green lending is. And really, credit union green lending is any loan or finance project that lowers utility bills or reduces air pollution, lowers greenhouse gas emissions, helps support, water usage, et cetera. And the good news is that credit unions already lead in loan products that can be adapted for those purposes. So for example, and this is just a small illustrative example, but I like to use this picture because you can really see all the places in a home that a green loan product can exist. We see many credit unions using consumer loans to help finance rooftop solar on someone's home. We see credit unions supporting their borrowers who want to upgrade to a more efficient or healthier stovetop or refrigerator or air conditioner, as well as doing more heating and cooling system updates like heat pump updates using their pre-existing home improvement loans for that type of purpose. And then we know that credit unions are excellent at vehicle and car lending. And we have seen with a lot of success, credit unions adopt an electric vehicle or EV loan product that fits right into what they're already doing in the space. And that's just a small sample. There's so many more ways that credit unions can do green lending, but I think it's important to sort of define it and also for our lenders to understand that it's not actually that different from what you all are already doing and sort of successfully have done over the years with your borrowers. To understand the space a little bit more, we always like to give this quick landscape view. So We conducted research on the credit unions in the US and found that 338 offer or are building a dedicated green loan product. That means serving about 20.5 million community members. These credit unions manage over 364 billion in combined community assets, and 84 of these lenders are certified CDFIs. We also were able to receive some loan data from a sample of 30 of these credit unions of the 338. They reported approximately 1 billion in combined investments into green projects over the past 3 years. And so really what we're saying here is credit unions are already leading in this space. They already know how to do it, and it's been very successful for them in terms of their business line. Okay, so in the spirit of this discussion, this meeting, I also wanted to back up and explain why we at Inclusiv feel like there's a role for credit unions, why we started the Center of Resiliency and Clean Energy, and where we hope the industry goes. The first, and you all know this, is that credit unions are financial first responders, whether it's responding to flooding in your community or the devastation that happens after a hurricane comes through, or wildfires, or any number of climate events that we've seen over the past few years. It's really, they're taking place in the communities that our credit unions serve, and these communities are often the least equipped financially to respond to to these natural disasters. And we have seen that our credit unions are the ones jumping in, providing those emergency loans the day after, making sure that their borrowers have what they need to keep, the roofs over their head and make sure they get access to the emergency needs that come with climate disasters. But in addition to that sort of resiliency response, credit unions also serve members with the highest energy burden across the US. And energy burden is the percent of gross household income spent on energy costs. The DOE found that the national average energy burden for low-income households is 3 times higher than for non-low-income households. And the ACEEE, which is the American Council for Energy Economy, found that Black households spend 43% more, Hispanic households 20% more, and Native American households 45% more on energy costs than white households. And high energy burden is correlated with greater risk of respiratory disease, increased stress and economic hardship, and difficulty moving out of poverty. So figuring out ways to reduce that energy burden is really critical to making sure that green lending is equitable and sort of exists and is serving the folks that we most want to serve through our loan products. Okay, so where does that leave us? Where does that leave credit unions? The good news is that there is really exciting federal funding opportunities for credit unions who might be interested in getting into this space, but not sure where to start, or in need of both technical assistance support or just grants and money to help sort of start these loan products. And I am sure at this point you've either heard or have some sense of this greenhouse gas reduction fund, but just at the highest level, it's $27 billion. That's part of the Inflation Reduction Act. That is going to be administered by the EPA and broken down into 3. They call them grant competitions. You can think of them as grant programs. That would be $14 billion for the National Clean Investment Fund, $6 billion for something called the Clean Community Investment Accelerator, and $7 billion for something called Solar for All. I'm not going to go into detail, and each of these grant programs have different objectives and sort of project structures, but they all actually have 3 overarching objectives: reduce emissions of greenhouse gases and other air pollutants, deliver benefits to low income and disadvantaged communities, and actually the CCIA and Solar for All, 100% of funds have to go to these low income and disadvantaged communities, and mobilize financing and private capital to stimulate additional deployment. In every one of these grant competitions, there is going to be a need for community lenders, and we believe credit unions in particular, to deploy these funds. So you have a role to play, and Inclusiv is here to help make sure that we know how to get you access to all of this funding. And I just want to put a bit of a finer note on that. Why are credit unions so critical? There's something called the Justice 40 Initiative. which is President Biden has promised to deliver at least 40% of overall benefits from all federal investments in climate and clean energy to disadvantaged communities. We know that credit unions are the ones that are often serving these communities. So how are we going to get that access there? It's going to be through our lenders. We are the ones that know how to serve and serve well the folks that President Biden wants to reach. And we know that credit unions typically leverage public dollars like CDFI grant funds 10 to 1. So they know how to deploy and they know how to leverage and make sure that these dollars are recycled and used for maximum impact. Okay, well, I will pause here and I'm going to turn it over to Hope Credit Union so that we sort of went from the big macro reasons why green lending is important. And we want to give you an example of one credit union who's really leading in this space and also respond to questions if there were questions in the chat. So Hope, Kiyadh, and Tyler, I'll let you all take it over and I'll control the slides.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to lead off our section, giving context to why this work and these funds are needed in the Deep South region that we serve. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tyler, who leads our Green Hope lending work, to talk about our more specific steps to provide impact for these communities. So before we get started, I want to give an overview of who Hope is. So Hope is a Enterprise Corporation and Loan Fund, a Hope Credit Union, a Hope Policy Institute, that is one of the largest Black and women-owned CDFIs and credit unions in the country. Since 1994, we have worked to increase financial inclusion throughout the most vulnerable populations in the Deep South states of Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee, which is a region that is home, that's the Deep South region, to over a third of the nation's persistent poverty counties, most of which these communities are rural. Now, from Hurricane Katrina to the Great Recession and the housing crisis to the COVID-19 pandemic and to the ongoing climate challenges that we see, Hope has worked with community stakeholders to forge policies and practices that address the conditions that are a consequence of the intersection of race, place, and policy. And since our inception, again in 1994, we have generated over $3.9 billion in community economic development financing that has benefited upwards of 2.7 million people in the region. Now, we draw our experience and data in this work from the expertise of our community stakeholders, who are often not just the institution, but the households themselves, either underserved or overlooked. And to that end, I do want to talk about what does this Deep South region look like. As I mentioned, Deep South is home to a third of the nation's persistent poverty counties. That is any county that has a poverty rate of at least 20% for the past 3 decades or 30 years. The majority of the communities that live here are people of color, with 40% of these persistent poverty counties being majority people of color. Now, the map on the left, as you see here, it's actually from the Rural Policy Research Institute, shows that many of these persistent poverty communities have actually been in poverty, deep poverty, for 5 decades, okay? Such deep poverty correlates strongly with high rates of unemployment, banking access challenges, and poor health outcomes. But we also see, looking at the map on the right, that deep poverty also correlates with climate change damage. So the Deep South, as we know, experiences several major weather-related disasters every year. In fact, in the last 5 years, the Deep South has declared more than 60 major weather-related disasters in more than 2,000 state and local jurisdictions. These severe weather events and deep poverty are in the same areas that are projected to have the most negative effects from the climate change, again, as we see on the map on the right. So when you see the dark blue and the lighter blue on the left, you're going to see a deeper orange and a darker red on the right. Next slide, please. Now, in the same region, we're going to see the highest rates of energy burden for low-income households, as Hannah just alluded to earlier. We know that for low-income households, the energy burdens are much higher, which in many ways creates a sense of financial instability. But what's interesting is, look at where the darker colors are. The higher averages of energy burdens are in Mississippi, in Alabama, and in Tennessee. And in Arkansas, if you look at data from the Energy Information Administration, so the Rocky Mountain Institute analyzed this data, and they showed that Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Arkansas rank first, third, fourth, and fifth, respectively. These are the highest rates of energy burdens in the country for low-income households. Now, what's interesting is approximately 34 million households reported that due to energy costs, they had to either forego food or medicine to afford their energy bills. So we now know that we're seeing the intersection of poverty, right, low income status, and climate change, or damage for that matter, intersecting here in the Deep South communities where Hope has 24 branches. Next slide, please. But it's not just a function of geography in which energy burdens and climate disasters are disproportionately affecting. We also see a disproportionate impact for communities of color. So you will see in the first map, this designated map A, that energy burden households overlap with communities of color. So in the previous maps where you saw the deep poverty, or you saw the high heat, or the climate damage, you're going to see in map A the same band of darker colors following those same communities. And if you look at map B, you're going to see that the extreme heat projections for the next 20 years or so are in the same areas. Okay. Now, what's interesting is, as I mentioned in the last slide, this is an area that has declared several weather-related disasters over the past several years. But more recently, we saw how these storm events, such as Rolling Fork, Mississippi, disproportionately undermine the economic and financial stability of small rural communities of color. So this is the context by which Hope has found its work in climate change, climate resiliency, and climate disaster. We're dealing with communities that need an additional sense of holistic approach, which to say is not just about household income, it's also about community economic development infrastructure. So I'm going to turn it over to Tyler to talk about how did Hope approach this work and how do we design our products to meet the needs of our communities.
Thanks, Kiyadh. So there is a really good connection here between Inclusiv and Hope. So Inclusiv has been very supportive of Hope as we've tried to stand up our products. And Hannah, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll get into what it looks like to design a product. So Inclusiv has run some boot camps that basically have helped us develop best practices and learn from what has been successful in other parts of the country. And what that means in terms of product development is we're looking basically at 3 different buckets: feasibility, viability, and desirability. And there's only so much that we can learn from other spaces. And where that really starts to show up is in the desirability category. For example, Kiyadh and I are in our Jackson office, and if you were to ride around Jackson, you'll see that there's just not a lot of solar panels. And so you start to hit on sort of questions of, is this desirable or not? And what that means in terms of product development is you have to realize that people control money. And if we don't have a product that they want, then we might not have a business. And so that really gets to the root of desirability. And to ground this work, we're basically shifting our mindset from knowing to asking. So we know what works in other places, but we have to ask our members, what do they actually want? And so what we did is we led off with a survey. You can see some of our findings on the left. And then we also did focus groups. And I have some slides coming up that will show you what some of this looks like in terms of focus groups. But I did want to call out that in the survey findings, there's really a pessimism about whether people in our communities, and this is being voiced from our communities, are actually going to receive the resources that Hannah pointed out and that we're so excited about. So what that turns into is sort of a trust issue. Hannah, can we go to the next slide? So, before we really get into the trust issue as sort of like a barrier, I did want to show everybody what it looks like to do design research and sort of meet people where they are. So this slide is basically helping you see what it looks like to have like a ranking scenario, giving people many options, letting them prioritize it. We're not really trying to put answers in their mouth. We're letting them tell us what's important. I liked this exercise because we also have like a wild card. You can't see what's written on those wild cards, but one of those says water conservation, which is a very Jackson specific issue. And then the other one says plug-in hybrid. And can we go to the next slide, Hannah? And so we also put people in scenarios. These are sort of what if scenarios that look a lot like a consumer journey. So here we were looking at, well, what happens if your car breaks down? Would you actually consider purchasing an EV? What are your barriers? And what we found, not necessarily to our surprise, but it helps validate us moving forward, is that when people go shopping for a car or replacing an AC system, they have these ways that they think about what they want to buy next. And, a lot of it is just quality of life issues. You see comfort showing up in both of these pretty high. And Hannah, can we go to the next slide? So we had some key takeaways. As I voiced this over, everybody can sort of let your eyes look around here and see some of the big headers. But some of the big things we saw here was education. And I was in the room during some of these sessions. People were generally learning like in real time about, what was on those different cards. They did not know a lot about plug-in hybrids, for example. A lot of them just had sort of assumed things were barriers. And then the word trust came up time and time again. And I think that's why CDFIs and credit unions that are location-based, very focused in these communities, know what reality is like on the ground are so important. So you see that word trust showing up, and Hope is ready to lead on this. So these are some of our takeaways from our consumers. And then I have another slide, Hannah, if we can go to the next one. This is looking at some of our bigger opportunities in the commercial space. So Hope is also lending to some what we would call like community facilities. So these would be healthcare, HBCUs, education, schools, churches are another one that shows up. And so we're also including them in our research sessions. One thing that you'll think would be obvious is that some of the groups that want to do business in these places are actually showing up in person. They're not. And so we heard from people, thank you for coming here. Thank you for being here. In some of these towns, Hope is like one of the only businesses in the downtown area. And so there's just a presence that's really important. So Hope is going to continue with this work. And I have another slide that's going to help everybody on the call understand what we're doing. I think I mentally jumped ahead. I have one more for you. So the one, Hannah, that you just skipped over that had sort of the dials, this one is where some of those barriers start to show up. So what is slowing down people? What could move the needle for different groups? And I just pulled this out of a Washington Post article. But what you'll see is social comparison is really, really important. Education is what we heard in our sessions, like people just needed to know. But when it came to actually making the change, that 14.4 number, what that means is we're going to need the churches to have solar panels, and we're going to need people to trust that, okay, seeing it on our church and on my neighbor's house, that's sort of the green light for me to go ahead, because not everybody wants to be the first mover. So this is where Hope is really seeing value. We're hearing it validated as well from our communities. And this is where we're so excited to have funding coming our way. So the last slide from the Hope team is going to be what our roadmap looks like for this year. The top part of our roadmap is calling out some of those federal funding opportunities. We have our Solar for All awards. Those are going to get announced between March and April. Hope is a applicant in Arkansas and Mississippi, and we feel very good about our applications there. What that would result in terms of impact would be around 5,000 households receiving funding for rooftop solar in each of those states. In Arkansas, we actually went a step further and proposed to have batteries paired with those solar systems. And that was because Arkansas has been pretty aggressive recently in rolling back some of their policies. So we actually found that would help families save more money. And then in July, we should have this funding, or we hope to. And I did a little screenshot there that shows you we're not only focusing on rooftop solar for residences, but we also have these components around affordable housing for multifamily. Renters can get left behind here. So we wanted a solution for renters. And then also community solar, which it's an uphill policy climb in our location. I'll leave it there for now. And then we also want to call out that we can't be solely dependent on federal funding. There's always something that can be taken away. So Hope is also moving forward with piloting commercial solar in electric vehicle pilots here in the first half of 2024. And we're hoping to scale those up. And so we just want to say thank you, especially to Inclusiv, for all the support that we've received and continue to receive. And thank you for giving us a space here to share this work. We love to talk to anybody on the call who's a peer or just wants to learn more about what we're doing. So back to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Tyler. And Liz, I'm just doing a quick time check. Happy to continue. We have a few more slides, or we can turn it over to discussion. I think we sort of captured the
Yeah, really rich discussion. Thanks, Hannah. Thank you, Kiyadh and Tyler. Really very informative, walking us through the process, painting a picture of the landscape, the data. Very, very informative. And we will be making the recording available on the UIS website. So a lot more information posted there as an ongoing source of information. So thanks to all of you. If there are any initial questions from the chat, or if anybody wants to come off the mute, that would be just fine to talk about this intersection. And you work with so many different with allies. Speaking to Hope with foundations, corporations, and your board.
There is a question from Caroline, if you want it.
Yes,
Yeah.
Hi,
Go
thank
ahead,
you
Caroline.
so much. Thank you for seeing my hand. So I'm having some internet issues, so hopefully this won't cut out again. So for larger credit unions, I'm calling from Alliant Credit Union. What are things that we can do, put in place, because this is all very important to me, and I know we're doing some solar loans and things like that, and we've worked with Tesla for years, but what are some things that larger, national credit unions can do as part of this effort to join, to support? I'd be really interested in hearing some more about that.
So Caroline, was that question to general or right to Hannah in terms of comments?
Well, whoever has an answer.
Okay.
I don't want to limit it. So
Hannah, why don't you handle like the sort of work that Inclusiv is doing, the product side, and then we'll talk about some of the other things that the overarching.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Love to hear that question. And the answer is so much. I think the right first step in terms of thinking about where you'll fit, where green lending sort of fits in your market, even if it's a national market, is sort of doing what Tyler did, which is like figure out what your borrowers want. Like send a survey, spend time really understanding their needs, their interests. We have a few sample surveys, but I'm sure there are also other ones that exist. But I think that's actually really critical, is making sure you're designing something that actually reflects the needs of the people and the borrowers that you serve. And then in addition, the beautiful thing about the credit union movement is that it is quite collaborative. And so there are already loan participation programs that exist that I think could benefit from both a larger credit union's interest in purchasing solar loans once you have your loan products up and running, selling those out or participating those out to smaller credit unions who might want to dip their toe in the field before really launching their own products. So down the road, I could see that being really critical. And I'll sort of pause there. I'd love to hear, Tom and UNFC's work, but Tyler, I don't know if you, from one credit union advice from the next, we love everything Hope does. I mean, that presentation was so incredible and inspiring. I don't know if you had any sort of peer thoughts as well that you've.
Hannah, the one thing that jumped to my mind was the participations. You know, something smaller credit unions are going to run into, Caroline, and we run into is, especially in the community solar space, the size of these solar arrays are getting bigger and bigger. And if you have experience in the space, the other thing I'll second is like, we found it so valuable to partner up with others. So even with what you've done so far, like finding smaller groups that may serve different populations, you can be really impactful as like letting them sort of be fast followers behind you in that space you're already knowledgeable. And Hannah, like whenever I have a question, I'm like, Hannah, what can I do? And she's like a connector for us. So you know, it's just, we can't say thank you enough. It is really important to connect with others. I hope that helps them.
Very good. Any other questions? Anything, Hannah, you'd like to share about training or upcoming educational opportunities?
Well, I thank you so much, Liz. I'd love to. I'll just, if you'll permit me to just quickly share my screen one more time. We do have, we have a few tips and tricks which can be part of the presentation. Oh, my apologies, I can do that in presenter mode. For sort of how to think about getting started, especially with, you know, understanding that these federal funding opportunities are coming out. And one of them is that Inclusiv in UNH runs a free solar lender training program designed specifically for community lenders, including credit unions. Tyler was a participant. And after you graduate, you become you become part of our alumni program, which means that you have access to us, to our experts. We have some technical assistance services. We do alumni meetings. We share resources. So it's a great sort of, in addition to the training, we also have a community that I really, I'm inspired by pretty much every day, and where we sort of try to help support each other. So we have courses coming up in consumer solar, commercial solar lending, and then energy efficiency and home lending. So I think I shared the link in the chat, but if you have any questions, please let me know. We're happy to sort of coordinate it and help you gain access. And I'll also just note that I have two colleagues here, Emma and Kathy, on the line, so no pressure, but if there's anything you'd want to share, that Inclusiv really works on this from a number of different perspectives and departments. So welcome your voices as well.
That's great. Well, I think we will conclude our Q&A with the group here. Just again, thank you so much. Extremely informative and action-oriented. At this point, we're just going to open up around the Zoom to see if any of the credit unions or associations participating would like to share anything that has happened in news-wise developments in climate justice or green lending, anything product and service-wise, any outreach, anything that worked, that you know that provided you with some insight. So this is just an opportunity, just in opening up the floor for anybody who'd like to share an update on their work. If anybody has any points, or yeah, we can.
This is Lauren. I'm from UMass 5 College Credit Union in Western Massachusetts. My first time joining this group. I'm really happy to have found it on LinkedIn, and what a great presentation. Thank you. We are a large solar lender in Massachusetts. As a credit union, we're about 700 million in assets, but we did about 50 million in solar rooftop lending last year. And one of the things that has definitely contributed to our success is forging really strong relationships with the local solar installers. It almost mimics like an indirect lending relationship, but way better. They're really wonderful to do business with. And a lot of times they are the first point
of contact with someone who is looking to install, and then they will make a referral. And we've been fortunate in the counties where we are primarily serving to be really top of their list. Also advertising the fact that you, if you don't, that you don't charge a loan origination fee. One of the things that we found nationally is that a lot of solar installers, if the financing company they do business with charges a loan origination fee, they bake it into the price of the solar array, and it's often hidden in the documents to the resident who is purchasing the array. And so, now their financing is, they're also financing the loan origination fee, and it can get like tens of thousands of dollars of these loan origination fees baked in. So letting the installer know that you don't have that, because sometimes if the cost of the array changes throughout the vetting process, if they can't increase the fee to their customer, they wind up eating it. So there's a really great role for credit unions to play. And I'm sorry if I'm repeating stuff that you already know. I'm just very excited to have found this group and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, really, Carolyn. Happy to have you join us, and great to have those insights and tips. Very helpful. Thanks again. Anyone else want to do some quick sharing of a best practice or a trend you've uncovered? Yes.
Hi, Liz. I'll jump in. I'm Tom Blekovich from the World Council of Credit Unions, and I just wanted to share my appreciation for the presentations today. And it's really been fascinating to see how this has played out in other countries around the world, and specifically in Latin America. WOCU's direct member in Brazil is called Sicredi. And if you've connected with WOCU at all in the past, we often highlight some of the examples we're seeing from this confederation of credit unions in Brazil. And they're doing some really amazing work in the sustainability space, and have really I think one of the more advanced sustainability strategies that I've seen in our work with credit unions around the world. One of the things that's happened over the last year through World Council is that we've connected Sicredi with the national federations of credit unions in both Colombia and in Peru, and they've signed these international cooperative agreements. And one of the key elements of the focus of this exchange is in climate finance and sustainability specifically. And so it's been very interesting to see this develop. What we're seeing is a real, the potential of how this is playing out in Brazil specifically, where this Sicredi confederation of 105 credit unions is just in the last year has channeled more than $600 million in lending to solar energy, specifically through their credit union confederation. And so they have quite a unique model that they've been able to tap into some international resources. And so as we work through these international exchanges, we're hoping to pull some additional insights to share around the world to help credit unions look regionally, nationally, locally at how they can incorporate these types of green lending programs, and leverage collaboration among us to access funding in a way that maybe wasn't possible in the past. So hope to have more to share on that in the coming months as we go throughout the year. We have now a group in Costa Rica and Brazil this week doing the same thing, learning, and we'll be building out their sustainability strategy for credit unions when they return. So that's all I have. Thank you. Oh, and so great to see everyone. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Tom. That's terrific to share those the parallels and the expansion in different networks and federations across Latin America. Anyone else? We'll just we have one moment if anyone else wanted to share. If not, we will move on to our next session. Thank you again, Tom. Sharing these best practices and ideas really gets to the heart of UIS and our convening and our goal is to provide more opportunities for sharing in the year ahead. So in that spirit, I will pass the baton over to my colleague, Sophia Villarreal, who is the program manager of UNFCU's Global Sustainability Program, to tell us what's ahead. Sophia, over to you.
Thank you, Liz. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Okay. Well, I'm very excited to share some very interesting news from UIS. The first one is that we are getting ready with a US handbook by early March. And this handbook will help credit unions start their sustainability journey. We're sharing our best practices from UNFCU, what has worked for us, and boiling it down to 4 indicators. And so, yes, I want to shed light on this. And like I said, early March, keep looking for this. Then the other point I would like to focus on is a plastics work group. So since the UIS Summit, we had a session on plastics, and it was very interesting to share our experiences on data collection to other credit unions, but also learn from other credit unions with different approaches. So the objective of this plastic work group would be to share the interest of credit unions in plastics, different approaches on data collection, and this would occur on Friday, March 22nd at 11 a.m. So if you want to pin that down in your calendars, we're very excited. It would be the first time we talk about this topic. Then thirdly, I guess some exciting news from the UIS Summit. It would occur in November again, but now would be in New York. So please put that also in your calendars. And another exciting news, we have our website, and Tom will help me put the link in the chat. And now you can sign up for updates regarding work groups or events, or if we release something new, you can sign in and you can get it on your email. So that's another update. Finally, I'll pass the baton to Prasad Surapanani, our Senior Vice President, Chief Information Officer, and also Global Sustainability Program Sponsor. And here we go.
Thanks, Sophia. Really appreciate that. Yima started with saying she had the simple task of welcoming you and saying thank you, but I have the difficult task of saying goodbye to you. I'm really heartened to see over 50 people joined, taking the time of their busy time. I don't have to tell you the importance of the work we do and the why we are all here. I'm not going to convince you on that, because you're already converts on that one. But the UIS network is formed based on 2 simple principles: community leadership and collaboration amplifies impact, and wanting to learn from each other. Today is a true demonstration of these principles, basically. I'm not sure what community leadership is, if not for what Kiyadh and Tyler demonstrated today, in truly understanding their community and serving their needs. I'm truly impressed and amazed with the work they're doing and how Hannah and Inclusiv is really helping them to advance their cause. That's basically the collaboration amplifies the impact. And Hannah showed us, by the way, Hannah, your energy is infectious, really. Thank you for doing that. And showed us how much money is there, from the federal government and Solar for All programs, and everybody can take leverage of that and really at the end of the day serve the membership. So it's truly impressive. And as you can see that all of us are available, and what we have learned in UNFCU, we're trying to propagate that to the UIS network, and also at the same time learning from each other as well. So it's important to get the senior leadership's buy-in and the board buy-in for these kind of initiatives as well. We strongly advocate that. I don't think there is a board meeting goes in our organization without the board members asking us and what we are trying to do in this space. And we really want to share with you all those best practices, and Sophia is putting out a handbook and all that good stuff as well. But more importantly, let's be in touch, follow us on UIS Network, let's collaborate, and we're going to go places. Thank you so much. But I can't, I'll be remiss if I don't thank Liz and Tom and Sophia for spearheading this tremendous amount of work they do. But thank you all, really appreciate your time. Over to you, Liz.
Thank you very much, Prasad, and thank you all, our audience, our speakers. Your enthusiasm was infectious, and we look forward to continuing these conversations. As we were saying, keep in touch. Our website, our LinkedIn, the channels are listed in the chat here, but we want to keep up the momentum and look forward to your active engagement over the next quarter. So thank you again. All the best, and go sustainability. Thanks, everyone.